What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Nolan TCG, and we are back here today for another deck profile, and this time, it's for Prank Kids. So we are in the new format, and of course, new format means new ban list means new stuff, and new stuff means we have a YCS in like 2 weeks. It's remote dual YCS, we got Europe and North America. Prank Kids is probably like, in my opinion, a top 3 deck for the event. I'd probably go like, Tri-Brigade is probably at the top still, then Drytron. Then I do still think Prank Kids is probably hanging on at the 3rd best deck in the format. Especially given with stuff like Striker coming into the format, Prank Kids does have a solid matchup against that because you can just make the Link monster, which I do think will now be a bit more prevalent in the going format. So I kind of figured I'd take you through my deck profile for this one. If you are looking out to play this at the YCS, of course, this is a base. I would always recommend changing things and customizing them to whatever your tastes are and whatever you think will be required. But let's get on into the deck profile. Before we get started though, please remember to drop down below and hit that subscribe button if you are new here. Because we are always happy to have new people on the channel. We almost stumbled over that, but let's start with the deck profile. Okay, starting us off, we of course have the playset of Prank Kids Lampsies. Big shocker. Burn 500, wins in time. Time will probably be a bit iffy at the YCS. I've honestly never played like a massive remote duels event before, so if time's super intensive, Lampsies of course will do well. So will Dropsies, gain the 1000, summon from deck. All these cards are just like cheese for time. This deck's very good if you can push it out to 40 minutes. Then we have after that the playset of Fansies. These are all just still pretty standard. 3-3-3 is what you should be playing in every Prank Kids deck. If you're not, it is just like blatantly wrong. Like I do apologize, but yeah, you just have to be playing 3-3-3 of these specifically. Roxies is where you can have a bit of variance. So for Roxies, in this list we are playing 2. So there is no Desires in this build. This is probably a more, I'd say a more competitive build designed to go first or second regardless of the die roll and the outcome. So 2 Roxies is probably most optimal for that situation. Same again is 2 copies of Parallel Exceed. You can trim the 3rd copies of each of these for more hand traps or more kind of control aspects of the deck. So of course you can just play a 2-2 line. You don't need to worry about Desires banishing them off. After that we get into our hand traps. These can of course always be switched to whatever you think are necessary. For us we're playing 3 copies of Ash Blossom. We're playing 3 copies of Droll and Lockbird. Then 3 copies of Nibiru follow that up. That does round out our monster lineup. Of course, I didn't go over it, but with the Parallel Exceed, it's mainly here because it can get you into Dweller plays, and Dweller plays can shut down a lot of decks. Probably the big meta decks, not so much. The Mirror, it will hit pretty hard, and there's a lot of Rogue that just don't play through an Abyss Dweller, and of course, that's something that you're going to be coming up against at a remote dual YCS. Then, next off, we go into the spells. 3 copies of Place. Start us off, of course, this is just more names. This is every Prank Kids monster in the deck, so you better be playing 3 copies of Place. Of course, it does chain block, so you can dance around Ash and stuff like that. Rounding that out, of course, we are playing the 1 copy of Terraforming, just because you want to be maximizing the Place. You essentially are subbing the Terraforming for the Roxies in this build, because you don't need the Roxies at 3, because it's considered a bad Prank Kid, and Terraforming can become any of the good Prank Kids. So Terraforming is what I would recommend over the Roxies in this build. Then going into our spells, we're at 3 copies of Prank Kids Pandemonium. Of course, hard drawing this in this format is not that bad, because it has come up once where my opponent's gone to summon Winder, and then I've like had the Pandemonium, I like slap it on board, and then manage to get to the big fusion. That also does say it multiple times, that does get around the Wind Barrier statue, if that does come back into Tri-Brigade. Going into the big fusion, because it is a wind, will get you around that. So, good times. You won't be able to prop your effects because of the Wind Barrier statue. Well, you'll be able to prop some and get into some wins, but yeah, you're not going to be going like full ham and summoning a whole bunch of stuff. After that, we are down to 1 copy of Pranks. Of course, no Desires means you don't have to worry about banishing your Pranks off, so you can cut that down to 1 and fit room for other cards. Speaking of those other cards, we do have 3 copies of Forbidden Droplets. Of course, good card. Negates the board. You can switch this out for anything that you'd like. Same with all of our other hand traps. Do flavor them to whatever you feel are necessary. Don't just completely play what I play, because that's probably not going to be the best situation for your locals or any events you're playing in. Then after this, we have 1 copy of Called by the Grave for stopping hand traps, and 1 copy of Instant Fusion. So Instant Fusion plus so a normal summon, Instant Fusion, and Parallel Exceed will get you into Dweller, Totally Awesome, and the ability to go into the Fusion. So that's something to keep in mind. Alternatively, you can use it to set up the Harpies, which is always a good play as well. Then we go into our traps. I'm still playing 2 copies of Plan. I am super big on 2 copies of Plan if you're playing the Link 4 for the Harpies effect. Of course, that is more prevalent in the current format, so it is a good way to go. But yeah, 2 copies of Plan, 1 for you to summon, for you to dump off your Lampsies so that you can banish it to recur your resources, and the other to have on field to then summon the Link monster. Then rounding out the main deck, this can be switched if you aren't comfortable with playing it, but 3 copies of There Can Be Only One. With you cutting Roxy's to 2, you can like play through this incredibly easily. Roxy's is the only card that chokes you out, so playing 3 copies of There Can Be Only One in the main deck, it gets around a lot of stuff in the format. Like, it is just overall a very good card, so you should probably be playing it. And yeah, we'll get into our extra deck. Okay, so starting us off for the extra deck, we of course have 3 copies of Prank Kids Meow Meow Mew. Of course, this is your Balinks for the deck. Doesn't activate, banishes itself from the graveyard to substitute out the Tribute of Cost effect. Of course, it is a Link 1 as well. That makes your whole deck go around, so you want to be playing this at 3 copies. Next off, after that, we've got 2 copies of Prank Kids Doodle Doo. Using it to search the spell and trap cards gets you through more of your combo and helps you set up. You can also, sometimes you'll burn through 2 on your opening combo if you do need to get back to a Doodle-Doo to get some recursion going and set up a particular board. That will be if you're trying to set up like a copy of Abyss Dweller, or you're trying to set up the Totally Awesome. You may burn 2 if you haven't opened the correct name to do that. So that can be sometimes necessary. Alternatively, you can just use the second for the grind game, which is the good reason of playing 2. The 1 copy of Bow Wow Bark, of course, you will recur this if you do need to recur this. When it tributes itself on the opponent's turn as well, do remember that your cards can't be destroyed by card effect. That is very important. Very, very relevant and important. After that, we have our Rip Roaring Rooster. In the current format, this has become so much better with Sky Striker and stuff coming back into it. Of course, Harpy's Feather Duster, good time. If you have your Meow Meow, it of course can be activated twice, and hopefully that makes your opponent have a very bad time. For the rest of our links, we have 1 copy of, I went to say the next card, its name, didn't say we're going to say this card's name, it's Nightmare Unicorn. 1 copy of Unicorn just for transitioning through to our access code talker and getting value. So we can go into the Unicorn, get that discard, get the shuffle, go into the access code, make it 5/3, pop the rest of your opponent's stuff hopefully, and then you kind of win. Then for our fusions, we have 1 copy of Rocket Ride, gets you the recursion off your instant fusion. 1 copy of Weather Washer, so you want to summon this on your opponent's turn, because it can trigger on your opponent's turn to get that double reborn. Of course, the double reborn can't be destroyed by battle, so you can use this to cheese, so do remember that. Then, last off for our fusions, well, we do have another fusion, but it's 1 copy of Battle Butler. This is your Regeki. Typically going to try and just end on this to make your opponent's life difficult. A lot of decks can't play through a double Regeki, so double Regeki it is. Then for our kind of generic card, we can play 1 copy of Ventus. You can switch this out, of course, if you want to switch it for something else. It's simply in here to make sure we get good value off of the Macabre. Of course, you can chain block it with the Totally Awesome, because that will also trigger. So if your opponent, if you're playing a Invoked, and they hit you with a Maximus, you can send Entus, Totally Awesome, chain block the Entus, and pop their Macabre if that's what they've set up. And then lastly, we have 1 copy of Abyss Dweller. We're going to be making this when we do our 2 level 4s. And then, yeah, that will hopefully win some games against some Rogue. But that wraps us up here for the deck profile for this one. So as always, if you do have any recommendations or things you would change, make sure to comment them down below. If you're watching this before the Remote Duel YCS, why not comment what you're playing as well? I won't be playing Prank Kids personally. I think it's pretty obvious I'll be playing Dragon Maid if you watch a lot of videos on the channel. Prank Kids, though, were probably my second option. So if disaster happens, you'll probably catch me playing this. But as always, I've been Ben from Nolan TCG, and have a good afternoon, everybody.